Philadelphia, one of America's great cities, where art, food, culture, and patriotism run deep, in a city known for brotherly love. Rich with American history and heritage and home to a prominent founding father. The location of Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776, and the place where the Constitution of the United States of America was ratified in 1787.
Freedom of religion tells us why we have a Constitution and assures that every person has the right of choice that God has given them.
A community settled by those who sought the free exercise of beliefs, where religion and diversity of faiths is still evident in everyday life.
This is a place where religious freedom is in the hearts of the people.
Now, a temple of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints stands in the midst of Philadelphia's past and present, and is symbolic of a bright future for Latter-day Saints in Pennsylvania.
To me, to have a house of the Lord near a place where such important things, the whole foundation of our country came, and I believe under the inspiration of God. And so I have a feeling that the Lord cares about this place and cares about this temple in a very special way.
Join us now for an LDS temple in Philadelphia, birthplace of American freedom. Here in downtown Philadelphia, a temple belonging to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints joins a diverse and historic landscape of places of worship in this city. With its architecture reflecting Philadelphia's heritage, the temple adds beauty and distinction to this city that was founded upon the belief of religious liberty. Just a few blocks away from the temple is the heart of Philadelphia's downtown, City Hall. This stately building symbolizes the city's storied history, and when it was built in 1894, it was the tallest building in the world. At the top of City Hall is a statue of William Penn, who founded the colony that would become Pennsylvania. A Quaker who had faced religious persecution in England, Penn promoted religious tolerance in this city, preaching, "We must give the liberty we seek." A century later, Penn's belief in religious freedom would become the framework for religious liberty in America at Independence Hall, beginning with the signing of the Declaration of Independence. A decade later, following the Revolutionary War, Philadelphia would once again become the center of debate as delegates from the 13 independent states met to discuss the future of America in the Constitutional Convention.
The Constitution establishes a form of government that depends not just on leaders in Washington and in the other states, but on citizens to perform their duties. And unless the citizens are actively observing what goes on in the government and in the enforcement of the laws, the system of democracy can't work.
With the belief the Constitution was divinely inspired, Latter-day Saints look to the Bill of Rights, which ensures freedom of religion.
Religious freedom is not just a human right to be weighed against other human rights. It is the basic, energizing, and explaining human right. It's the reason we come together in an ordered society. And for Latter-day Saints, it's essential to carrying out our Heavenly Father's plan of salvation for His children.
Within a generation of the Constitution of the United States being signed, a new religion was founded in America, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But in the months leading up to the church's organization in Fayette, New York, several important events occurred in northern Pennsylvania. In 1828, church founder Joseph Smith moved with his wife Emma to her parents' farm in Harmony, Pennsylvania. It was here that the majority of the Book of Mormon was translated, away from the persecution that Joseph faced in his hometown of Palmyra. During the translation, Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery inquired of God about the need of baptism, resulting in what Latter-day Saints believe was a visitation from John the Baptist, who restored the priesthood on earth. After receiving the Aaronic priesthood, Joseph and Oliver walked a short distance to the nearby Susquehanna River, where they were baptized. This important step in the restoration is reflected in a mural painted by Utah artist Doug Fryer that is in the baptistry of the Philadelphia Temple. Last fall, the new priesthood restoration site was dedicated by President Russell M. Nelson.
I hope that the families of the church and families of the area will come here and get the inspiration for themselves to walk where these great angelic messengers, heavenly messengers, walked and restored the keys of proper authority that allow God's children to return to Him.
The site includes replicas of the home belonging to Emma Smith's parents, as well as the cabin where Emma and Joseph lived. There is also a visitor center giving Latter-day Saints a new opportunity to better understand the significant events that transpired here in the church's early history. A decade after leaving Harmony, Joseph Smith would return to Pennsylvania, spending several weeks organizing a small branch of the church here in Philadelphia. This is the building where he preached a sermon to a large crowd. At the time, it was a Universalist church once attended by John Adams when he was vice president. Today, it is a Jewish synagogue. The 1839 sermon is documented in the Journal of Parley P. Pratt, according to Dr. Alex Baugh, professor of church history at BYU.
When Joseph Smith stood up, he just electrified the congregation. And he spoke of his early experiences, of the coming forth of Moroni and the Book of Mormon and the ministering of angels. But I think Philadelphia had greater meaning to Joseph Smith than we maybe think. After all, this is where the Founding Fathers established the constitutional government we now enjoy.
The important role Philadelphia played in establishing religious liberty when an LDS temple in Philadelphia, birthplace of American freedom, continues. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. These are the very first words to the First Amendment to the Constitution, ratified here at Independence Hall in 1791. Freedom of religion is often referred to as the first freedom, a right guaranteed by the Bill of Rights, a conviction the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has always held close, believing that all people have a God-given right to worship as they choose.
Mormons certainly have a reason to honor religious liberty because they were so trespassed upon.
Richard Bushman is an LDS scholar and emeritus professor of history at Columbia University. He's recognized as a leading researcher in the life of Joseph Smith and authored the book Rough Stone Rolling. He says Latter-day Saints have had a strong interest in religious freedom since facing persecution in Missouri in the early 1830s.
And it's from that point on that Joseph Smith begins to take an interest in the Constitution. He never had taken interest before, but now he saw that the Constitution was the chief bulwark he had against this kind of persecution.
Even though Joseph Smith proclaimed his religion as Christ's restored church, Bushman says he still defended the beliefs of others.
Joseph Smith is famous for introducing into Nauvoo a city ordinance that granted religious liberty to everybody, Christians, Jews, Muslims. He wanted everyone to feel at home there. And I'm sure that came out of his own experience.
Concerns about religious freedom have been part of the LDS Church's history, from the early years of persecution through the polygamy era in the late 1800s to today, with the current political and legal debate over many social issues. Why do you believe the topic of religious freedom is such an important discussion to be having right now, not just among Latter-day Saints, but society as a whole?
Latter-day Saints need to be aware of what's going on in their communities, particularly in the way that two great forces are being weighed against and applied against one another. One is religious freedom, the other is non-discrimination. One of those doesn't replace the other. They are to live together in harmony, and we need spokesmen for both of them, and we need to have people who look at how the balance is being struck.
In June, Elder Dallin H. traveled to England, along with Princeton professor Robert George, a prominent Catholic, and the former chair of the U.S. Commission for International Religious Freedom. Both received an invitation from Baroness Elizabeth Berridge, a member of the British Parliament's House of Lords, to speak about the need for religious freedom in the world with the all-party parliamentary group.
And it's important that we're a team. You know, you've outlined, Professor George, is the academics. We need the academic input into what's happening here. So it's essential that people like LDS and BYU are around the table, because otherwise parliamentarians like myself, we don't have access to the best of thinking.
Come on right here.
The current worldwide refugee crisis, which is largely fueled due to religious persecution of believers in the Middle East, is why Professor George believes religious organizations need to engage and work together in this discussion.
There are limits to what can be done by governments and by international institutions like the United Nations. An enormous amount of necessary work needs to be done by faith groups and other non-governmental organizations.
All agree that society as a whole benefits when people can freely engage in a religion of their choice.
We want the blessings of religious freedom to be claimed by all of the inhabitants of this planet, and we're far short of that at present.
Elder Oaks left Parliament encouraged progress was made in developing more collaboration between government, churches, and scholars on religious liberty when it comes to people of faith who are persecuted because of their beliefs.
They were very fluent, very supportive of religious freedom, and anxious to talk about the various ways that the case for religious freedom could be carried out.
The next day, Elder Oaks delivered a speech at Oxford University.
Religion inspires many believers to service to others, which in total confers enormous benefit on communities and countries.
At the St. John's College International Symposium of Religious Freedom, specifically focusing on how governments and religions can work together for the common good.
Here at Oxford, we're concentrating on international religious freedom and adding our voice to those of others who are trying to promote the blessings of religious freedom for all people everywhere.
It is the cooperation between faith leaders, scholars, and governments that those involved in organizing the symposium believe will result in more religious freedom for people around the world.
Oxford is international. Oxford brings together practitioners, people from all kinds of backgrounds, academic of course, and it's a place where I think this kind of a message is particularly well suited.
In September, Elder Oaks spoke at a gathering of 25 LDS stakes in Dallas, Texas, at the church's first regional conference focused on religious freedom.
We are here to talk about how to preserve religious freedom while living with the differences that exist in our society, among our friends and neighbors, and even within our families.
A new church website, religiousfreedom.lds.org, provides resources for Latter-day Saints to better understand their role in promoting religious freedom.
Our objective in Dallas was to help church leaders and members have a better understanding of what religious freedom is and why it's important to understand how it is being applied or not being applied in our own society, and what kind of efforts the individual Latter-day Saint can make to assure its preservation.
And perhaps in Philadelphia, there is more religious diversity than any other city in America.
The very radical notion at the time of religious freedom, and to see 300 years later how that has manifested really an unimaginable array of expressions of belief.
How people of faith in this city work to find common ground when an LDS temple in Philadelphia, birthplace of American freedom, continues. Not far from Independence Hall here in Philadelphia, on the grounds of the National Museum of American Jewish History, stands this statue. The 1876 work is called Religious Liberty. Sculpted by a Jewish Civil War veteran, this statue symbolizes America's belief in respecting all faiths and defending religious freedom. When Pope Francis visited the United States last September, he spoke at Independence Hall on the need for religious freedom in the world.
All men and women of different religious traditions may dialogue without fighting each other. That is what religious freedom gives us.
Catholics and Latter-day Saints have found common ground with religious freedom and work together to promote it. In the process, LDS leaders have developed a warm relationship with many Catholic leaders, including the Archbishop of Philadelphia, the Most Reverend Charles Chaput, who in March was invited to speak at BYU. The Basilica of Saints Peter and Paul, headquarters of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, is right next to the new temple, a reminder of the friendship the two faiths share. Several Catholic priests toured the Philadelphia temple during the open house, along with many people of other faiths. Leaders of other religions also attended to support and learn more about their Mormon neighbors.
I feel so privileged, and we all do in Philadelphia, to have had the opportunity to be in this time when the temple opened itself so generously to the community.
Abby Stamelman Hocky, who is Jewish, leads the Interfaith Center of Greater Philadelphia.
We believe that William Penn's Holy Experiment is still unfolding in our times,
which works to encourage fellowship among Philadelphia's many diverse religions. Last year, the city's faith leaders joined together to counter a divisive anti-Islamic ad campaign, encouraging Philadelphia to dare to understand.
You hate for there to be a negative cause for people to rise up and have to take that moment to say we're all in this together, but in many ways it was a very public and proud moment for Philadelphia.
Even with distinct theological differences, faith communities here are learning to not only respect, but appreciate each other's beliefs.
The drafters of our Constitution have given us an enduring principle that we can all be grateful for, and we're proud to try to do this work here and to continue the Holy Experiment that was radical at its time and has new cutting edges to forge in these new times as well.
While Philadelphia is the fourth largest metropolitan area in the United States, the nearest LDS temples were in Washington, D.C. and New York City. Local Latter-day Saints rejoiced in 2008 when it was announced a temple would be built in Philadelphia. However, city officials initially resisted plans for the downtown location.
As a child, I told the mayor I grew up in Tonga, and at the age of 5, my family had sacrificed a great deal to go to the temple.
Former BYU football star Vi Sikahema, who came to the city 25 years ago to play for the Philadelphia Eagles and now serves as a stake president, remembers being invited to attend a meeting with city leaders. He promised them that the temple would be a blessing for the city.
I don't know how little or how much influence I had in that. I just know that I felt impressed to say something to the mayor and share with him in 5 minutes my experience with temples and how important temples are. Not just us as Latter-day Saints, but the people here in Philadelphia.
Approval was eventually granted, and in September of 2011, city officials joined church leaders as ground was broken for the new temple. As work progressed, local Latter-day Saints found a way to build bridges with the union construction workers.
The only thing that we could come up with was cookies. And so we thought, why not have a Cookie Wednesday?
Early on, there were few takers for the cookies, but in time, the cookies began to disappear. For 3 years, volunteers baked 300 every week.
I think we're able to just talk about their lives too. We've become more than just construction workers, they've become our friends.
After nearly 5 years of construction, the new temple was finally ready for dedication.
This is a jewel for this great city. And to me, I'm just so pleased to be part of it.
On Sunday, September 18th, President Henry B. Eyring and Elder D. Todd Christofferson joined with other church leaders as the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania Temple was dedicated. Inside, the new temple reflects Philadelphia's history and heritage. The elegant designs have a unique flavor of colonial America. Murals portray the Pennsylvania landscape. In a house of the Lord, where those who sought after freedom are remembered.
I love the city of Philadelphia and the founding fathers, and I know that they laid the groundwork for this beautiful temple.
Now with the temple in Philadelphia, Latter-day Saints believe it will be an influence for good and symbolic of what the name Philadelphia really means, the city of brotherly love.
I think it's just going to be accepted by the people in a way that will draw us all together. I think our differences will begin to melt a little in just the feeling of the love of God that this building represents.
And in the place where the struggle to establish the free exercise of religion was overcome more than 3 centuries ago, this city remains an example for people everywhere that even with differences, living together and respecting each other is possible in an effort to achieve fairness for all.
We have work to do. We're in process. But I think with goodwill and civility, we'll find our way through this. I'm optimistic.